Thank you. So this project, I'm not going to go into much detail on the SPEAR project. I think you will be hearing about it a bit later. But if you are curious, you can check out the website. And it's basically a project focusing on how different species respond to the effects of climate change, and how we can best equip our trans-European nature network to deal with this and protect species more effectively. Yeah, so on to introducing our plan for this webinar. We will first take a look onto the EU's take on climate adaptation in Natura 2000 from the policy side. Next, we'll go on to discuss the role of protected areas to safeguard habitats and species. And finally, we'll be looking at how different management strategies have been used in Natura 2000 sites. How can we assess them? And this includes a questionnaire for Natura 2000 site managers done in the context of the Biodiversity Peer Project. So without much ado, I will call on our first speaker of the day. It's Stefania Charisiadou from DG Environment. Welcome. Since I will share your screen, your presentation, let me just take a minute to change things. But yeah, feel free to make a small introduction on yourself as I am doing this.
Thank you so much, Monica, and thanks for the invitation. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stefania Charisiadou, and I'm a policy officer at DG Environment, the European Commission, working in particular with the Birds and Habitats Directives and the Natura 2000 network. So I have a very a short presentation that I will set the scene basically, and we'll talk about briefly EU priorities targeting both nature conservation and climate resilience. So let's see if voila.
Can you all see my screen? All right.
Perfect. Is it presentation mode? I think it's not, right?
You're right, it's not. It should be.
Yay.
Yes.
Perfect. Since I introduced it briefly, maybe we can go to the next slide directly. Thank you. So it is evident that human-induced climate change is affecting our planet, and in particular, Europe is the fastest warming continent, with potentially catastrophic consequences unless we take further action to boost resilience. Sorry, before. Thank you. And exactly for this reason, like last week, the European Environment Agency published the first ever European Climate Risk Assessment report, which provides a comprehensive overview of the level of the climate risks, as well as the urgency to act, and identifies also who has the responsibility for taking action. Responding to this publication, the Commission adopted this communication on managing climate risks, which is calling for further actions to build climate resilience in the EU and effectively manage climate risks. I also have the links in my presentation if you would like to read the report and the communication. If we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the climate risk assessments identified 36 key climate risks for Europe. that are separated into 5 broader policy clusters, which concern ecosystems, food, health, infrastructure, and economy and finance. And it evaluated these risks based on the urgency to act. As you can see, the risks under the cluster of ecosystems have the highest numbers of risks identified under the category of urgent action needed or more action needed. So it is pretty clear that we need to act when it comes to supporting climate resilience for ecosystems and the environment. So the report concluded that policy implementation in the cluster of ecosystems should be improved in order to support response to climate risks, as well as further guidance to member states should be given to strengthen the protection of ecosystems. It pointed out in particular that special attention should be given to the implementation and restoration of protected area networks in and outside Natura 2000, and in particular also increasing connectivity. Next one, please. Yes, thank you. So protecting and restoring nature, it's of course a fundamental part of the European Green Deal, together with reaching climate neutrality. And the main strategy we have to implement several actions is the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030, which is in the next slide. Thank you. So the Biodiversity Strategy for 2030 basically sets an overarching objective to put Europe's biodiversity on path to recovery, recognizing also that biodiversity loss is interlinked with climate change. And we need solutions to both of these challenges in order to be able to deal with them effectively. So under the pillars of the biodiversity strategy, we have nature protection and restoration. And in particular, we have the 30% protected area targets, one third of which should be strictly protected, as well as the target to support the improvement of conservation status for species that are currently in unfavorable conservation status. And of course, we have the commitments to propose a nature restoration plan with binding nature restoration targets. So if we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as regards the protected area targets, as well as the conservation status improvement targets under the biodiversity strategy, these are voluntary targets. So basically member states are free to submit their pledges that they describe their commitments towards achieving those targets. Unfortunately, so far, we have not received a lot of those pledges. We have received only 5 for the protected area targets, which are currently under assessment by the EA and the Commission. However, they seem to be too few in order to assess progress towards the EU targets for the expansion of protected areas. Another very important pillar, of course, of the biodiversity strategy is the proposal of a nature restoration law, which sets an overarching objective towards a continuous long-term and sustained recovery of nature across the EU through the implementation of restoration measures for degraded ecosystems. The text of the nature restoration law has been provisionally agreed some time ago, and actually now it's in the final stage of the co-legislation procedure. So we expect a vote in council next week, 25th of March. And fingers crossed, if this is positive votes, then the nature restoration law will be able to be adopted officially soon after. And of course, one of the key objectives of the nature restoration law is to support synergies with climate change mitigation, adaptation, and disaster prevention through the implementation of the national restoration plans of the member states. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the communication on managing climate risks that it was published last week pointed out that further synergies with climate change should be ensured through the implementation of the Birds and Habitats directives and the development of the national restoration plans under the upcoming nature restoration law. In particular, to support climate change adaptation in protected areas, the Commission will update the guidelines on Natura 2000 and climate change. This is a commitment that comes from the climate adaptation strategy, so it is not a new one, but it has been reiterated in this communication now that there is quite some momentum towards taking action. And if we go to the next slide, please, I will say a few words about the guidance. So basically, this will be an update of the previous guidelines. We do have some guidelines currently available from 2013, and we are updating them. So the purpose will be to provide guidance to Natura 2000 managers and the nature conservation authorities to support a better understanding of how Natura 2000 network can be adapted to climate change, but also how it can support climate resilience in the EU. So the guidelines will propose an adaptation support framework to address climate risks for Natura 2000, and will also support the identification of strategic planning and partnerships, practical measures that are needed to support adaptation at network, site, and wider landscape level, as well as potential funding opportunities to do so. The guidance also will clarify possible opportunities enshrined in the legal framework to adjust the network and its management in response to climate change. And it will showcase win-win opportunities for Natura 2000's network to support nature-based solutions and climate resilience in the EU. So the expected timeline for this initiative is 2024. And most probably it will be published after the summer. So we have delayed this initiative a little bit, but I think now and after these communications from DG Climate and the new Commission communication, the time is ripe and it's probably more relevant than ever to gain momentum. So if we pass to my last slide, I think that was all from me. And now I will leave you to Ellie and Giorgio that will talk about their studies, which hopefully can be used in our guidance as examples of good practices to support adaptation in Natura 2000. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefania, for your presentation. It was very nice to hear that the climate guidance is coming soon. I would now like to ask Wojciech if he can take any questions from the audience. I will be preparing the next presentation.
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Wojciech Mróz. I'm project officer in our Euroscience Secretariat, and I will chair the discussions between presentations and our session at the end of the webinar. And just to let you know, you probably seen this message in chat that all of you can insert or type your questions using this Q&A button down there, or usually on your right hand. And I see a hand there, so we can also let you speak directly. Just a moment. Mhm. I see that there's no hand anymore, so I think it was a mistake. Oh, I see a question already. Perfect. So we've got a question to you, Stefania, from Reto Spielhofer. It's thanks to the presentation. There is the global initiative to establish OECM as defined by IUCN. Are there any initiatives to include this in the new guidelines in order to strengthen the Natura 2000 network? If you could answer.
Thank you. The guidance will mainly target Natura 2000, so it will be very specific for the network. But as I said, it will also consider the general landscape. So it will also consider actions needed outside of the network. So in this framework, other areas apart from Natura 2000 could be also considered.
Thank you. I think it's clear for you, Reto, and all of you. And I see another question by Anya. Do you have examples of how the exception possibilities in the Habitat Directive can be used in order to implement climate adaptation projects?
The guidance should touch upon this, should explain a little bit the possibilities of the legal framework. So for this reason, it will be a commission guidance, actually.
Thank you. Anyone more would like to ask a question? Okay, so I think for the time being, I see no questions or no hands. So yeah, I think that we can move to the next presentation. And remember that during the whole webinar, you can still ask questions to Stefania and all speakers. So we'll answer them at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Wojciech. Up next, we have the presentation from Ellie Gaget. Ellie, who represents Tour du Vala and works as a postdoctoral researcher. Yes, I see you have your presentation up already. Nice. And yeah, he will talk about the role of protected areas in climate adaptation.
Thank you, Monica.
So welcome, Ellie.
Thanks. So yeah, it's a real pleasure to talk here about some research work we did on waterbird over the last decade, and it's wonderful to see that so many of you are interested in this approach. So I'm a researcher at the Tour du Vala, which is the Mediterranean Institute for Wetland Conservation, and I will present a case study on waterbirds that can be adapted to think about implementing climate adaptation strategies in the Natura 2000 network. But just before to talk a bit more about the waterbirds, I just want to be clear what I meant by species responses to climate warming. Here you have two maps of the biome distribution at the last glacial event and nowadays. So 20,000 years ago, and now after an increase in 8 degrees. So you can clearly see that the biome changed, like the tundra was in Spain, France, and Italy. Now it's up north. And also the species distribution changed. The lemming and reindeer moved to northern countries. So over the last million years, species were used to change their distribution in response to glacial events, so cold and warm period. Habitat, like the migration, so the distribution shift was the most frequent response, but also the species can shift in habitat, so to find local micro-refugees, or also just tolerate the changes. And if they don't, they get extinct. But even if the species adapt to the past changes, past climate changes, it doesn't mean that they will do that for the next one, for the current one actually, because climate change is very fast. Because habitat and species population are heavily degraded. There are some issue with ecosystem fragmentation, limiting distribution shift. And also the most important thing is that the temperature will increase above levels never reached since million years. So this is really an issue and motivates the need for climate adaptation strategies. The work I will present you are all based on the International Waterbird Census, which is coordinated by Wetland International and aim at collecting waterbird abundance time series during the non-breeding period at global scale. In the Western Palearctic, it's done since more than 30 years on more than 100 species, and data are collected by 10,000 people in all the EU and around. And these data are used for scientific research, but also in policy, such as for the Article 12 report of the Bird Directive, but also for the Ramsar Convention. So these data are useful for conservation, policy, and also research. So what have we learned from waterbird responses to climate warming? First, we know that waterbird distribution during the non-breeding period is shifting to the north in response to climate warming. But in fact, this shift is not fast enough compared to the shift in temperature. So there is a mismatch, an increasing mismatch between the thermal niche of the species and the temperature occurring in Europe. And this is called the climatic depth. So it's just a lag between species distribution and temperature. And we know that habitat quality matters in the species responses to climate warming. When we have natural habitat conversion on wetlands, we observe that species responses to climate warming are limited. So from a conservation perspective, we also know that protected areas can facilitate colonization of species extending their distribution north, but protected area can also help to reduce the extirpation of species at the southern part of their distribution. So the species vulnerable to climate warming in that part of their distribution. And contrasting different protected area, we show that in the Natura 2000 network, when protected area target waterbirds and when they have a management plan, then they are the most effective to improve species responses to climate change. So both to facilitate colonization and to reduce extirpation. And Leonie Jonas, who is doing a PhD at the University of Turku in Finland and at the Tour du Vala, she works on the LIFE program, and she shows that the LIFE project targeting to protect waterbird habitat show better responses to climate warming. So at that site, waterbird responses are better than when there is no protection enforced by LIFE project. So we know that something is working inside conservation. We know that some protected areas are helping waterbird to adjust to climate warming, that some conservation action can be helpful. But for now, it's like just a side effect of conservation, because obviously most of protected areas have not been designated to fight against climate warming or to protect species against climate warming. So how, if we can use this conservation action or this means to set up climate change adaptation strategies for biodiversity conservation? Maybe we can protect even more the species against climate warming. So for that, we need a good methodology, and I will present some slides about that. We need also evidence-based conservation action, and Giorgio will talk a bit more about that. And we need to track progress in climate change adaptation strategies by doing monitoring of the conservation action, but also the species responses to climate warming. So maybe some of you knows already the Resist, Accept, Direct framework, the RAD, which is very intuitive and also very very adapted to management of protected area. If you are a protected area manager, for instance, you can think about whether you would like to shape the trajectory of a change due to climate warming or not. So if you want to interact with climate warming on your targeted species or habitat, then if you don't want to interact, then you accept the effect of climate warming. If you want to interact with the effect of climate warming, then the question is whether you would like to keep the condition at historical level, or if you want to move toward new conditions. So it can be either to resist against climate warming or to direct, so to see some opportunities to change your targets and to improve some species that can both beneficiate a bit from climate warming, but also you want to go slightly in a different way than climate warming is doing. And let's think that we could implement this Resist, Accept, Direct framework at EU scale for non-breeding water birds, because we know that there is a lag in distribution change for the species, so we might want to improve species distribution shift, but also we need to think about avoiding range reduction, so to keep a balance between colonization at the north and extirpation at the southern part of their distribution. So if you take the golden eye, for instance, so in blue and red, it's the cold and warm area for this species, and in black you can see the Natura 2000 protected area targeting goldeneye during its non-breeding season. So maybe at the northern part of the distribution, we would like to get larger abundance of the species to improve the change at this cold distribution margin. So to make the population going a bit north and faster. In the south, maybe we would like to accept that the species is decreasing if the range is shifting to the north. But maybe also we would like to resist against the shift, against the local extirpation, to limit the range reduction in the south. And in the core of the distribution, maybe we just want to accept nothing special is required. But what is the most important here is the cooperation and the planification of this framework at EU scale to think about how to help the species at the entire flyway to adapt to climate warming. And then implementation of the action should be done at local scale, obviously. If you are a protected area manager and you are interested in this question of adaptation plan, you might already know this live Natura Adapt, which has been done over the last year to help managers to develop an adaptation plan for a protected area. So this live produced a guidance to help you to set up, or at least to think about how to implement climate adaptation strategies in your protected area. And this is done through different steps. First, to identify climate threats and which are the vulnerability or the opportunity for your targeted species or habitats. Then it's possible to define the adaptation measure, even if they are not really explained in this live Natura Adapt, which action you should do. But this is something Giorgio will talk a bit about. And then this guidance helps you to define the monitoring and evaluation of the adaptation plan and to prepare to prepare its integration in the management plan. So this can be really helpful for you to think about how to implement climate adaptation strategies in your management plan. This is all for me. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for my colleagues and all the project granted who successfully inform this strategy.
Thank you, Ellie, and thank you for the great presentation. It was very informative. So I guess we can move on to the Q&A. If anyone has any question, please put it down in the chat. Wojciech,
Hello again. I'm just checking our Q&A box. There's no questions for now. Maybe you can wait a minute or so. Anyone would like to ask something? No. Okay, so I think I see no questions. Last chance, last question. If not, just a reminder that you can still put a question during the next presentation, then we'll come back to this. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'd say if everyone is okay with it, we can have a short 5-minute break and then continue with the presentation from Giorgio. All right. If everyone has had time to take a bathroom break, I think we're ready to start. And very sorry, my mistake in the chat. I really meant to say 1542, not 4. So if everyone is ready now, we can move on to the presentation of Giorgio, if he's back. Hi, Giorgio.
Hello.
So Giorgio is a PhD candidate at the University of Turku, and he's the person behind the questionnaire for the SPEAR project, the questionnaire to Natura 2000 site managers that we've been sending around. And he's happy to tell you a bit more about the process behind the questionnaire and the rest of his research within the biodiversity SPEAR project. So, Giorgio, if you want to take the floor.
Thank you. See fine. Okay. So yeah, thank you, Monica. And yeah, I will talk to you a bit more in detail about this survey that we developed as part of the SPEAR project. First, a bit of introduction, maybe. So the SPEAR project, Monica was mentioning it also before. So SPEAR stands for Scenarios for Protecting European Avian Distributions. It's a project funded by the Biodiversa Plus, which is this European Biodiversity Partnership. And the overall project idea is to investigate how to improve bird conservation in Europe in the face of climate change. And the project is very broad. There are a lot of partners involved, a lot of specific tasks that I will not talk to you about it now, but if you are interested, you can check on the website. And specifically, my role is to understand more in detail which conservation actions are done, where and why, and also how climate change is being perceived and dealt with on a local scale. So, okay, you probably know the situation of Natura 2000 and management. So there is available information about whether a management plan is present or not, but it's quite difficult to get standardized information on its actual implementation. There are the national reports that are done, and there's some information on the conservation measure, but every few years and on a broad level, why in situ information is more difficult to obtain. And moreover, management plans only rarely explicitly take climate change into account, but we have evidence that also generic conservation intervention benefit species impacted by climate change. As also Ellie was mentioning this talk before, that they found that the wing-tailed birds community adjust faster to climate change in sites where a management plan is present. But which type of actions are the most beneficial is we don't know. So climate change is composed of many parts and can threaten biodiversity in different ways. And this is some preliminary results that we got from some sites that we asked about this. And you can see most of the players believe both warming and the change in precipitations to be a threat. And in most of the places where they're not yet believed to be a threat, I believe too that they will probably be a threat in the future. And then there is a sea level rise that, of course, it's more local specific, so less sites perceive it as a threat. But again, the increased frequency of extreme events is considered a threat from many sides. So some more words about climate change as a threat in general. Climate change differs from the traditional drivers of biodiversity loss because sort of challenge assumption that the futures need to resemble the past. And so in this way, it's difficult to deal with it because even if you eliminate all other stressors, climate change will still be impacting your protected area. And it was in this optic that this resist accept direct framework that Ellie introduced before was developed to encompass all possible management response. So resisting is effects, accepting them, or directing them towards a new desired condition. And maybe we can talk a bit more about this RAD approach and with some practical example to understand it a bit more. So the RAD approach was developed in the US, and there we have most of the examples, and there's really used quite a bit. And this example is one of the sort of classic example to explain the direct approach. And yeah, we are in the Kenai Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. It's a place on the sort of border between tundra and taiga biome. And a few years ago, there was an outbreak of this spruce beetle. And this outbreak was favored very much by climate change because when it's warmer, this beetle has faster cycles, and also the spruce are less resistant with warmer temperatures. So as a consequence, a large part of the areas that were forested, they were turned into grassland. And this grassland is a not very biodiverse grassland. It's dominated by just one species, which is Calamagrostis canadiensis, and it's likely not to turn back to be a forest on itself due to the still presence of the bark beetle and to the many fires that are happening in the grassland. So it is left managers with different options on how to proceed. So they could try to resist by actively planting the spruce, but this approach is likely destined to fail, again, because the beetle is still there. Or they could simply accept this grassland, but that's also not very much desired because it doesn't host a lot of biodiversity. So they could direct the change. They could direct it in different ways. One way is to say, okay, we really want a forest, but since the spruce forest is not doable, we can plant non-native trees, the lodgepole pines, that are more resistant to the beetle. And with that, we can also maybe enhance some non-native species like the black-tailed deer. Or another possibility is to say, okay, we have a grassland, let's embrace the fact that we have this grassland, but let's make it more biodiverse. And this can be done with smaller prescribed fire and also with the introduction of larger grazer, like the bison. And currently, both of these approaches are being tested in different parts of the park. We can also quickly see a more European example. Let's say that we have a wetland in Southern Europe, for example, Camargue, where that is home to wintering ducks. And due to climate change, this wetland is drying out. So you could say it's really important, these wintering duck sites. So I try to resist the effect of climate change. So you pump more water to keep a high level for ducks. But maybe it's not really feasible to pump so much water to maintain the ducks. So you use maybe less water, and you can maybe flood some farmland and prepare for the arrival of shorebirds. Or another possibility to simply accept and it can either do nothing or facilitate the process that will naturally occur with the drying of the area, maybe like planting or removing some vegetation. So this READ framework, of course, presents many challenges, both practical and philosophical. Practical, because we don't know very well what actions can help to resist, accept, or direct the change. And that's also what we're trying to study a bit. And of course, there's always some also uncertainty, and especially in this beginning, it's requires also some experimentation. But then there are also some more philosophical challenges we want, like how do we decide when to resist, accept, or direct? Because this can sometimes be very obvious what you should do, sometimes it may be more subjective. And it's important to note that this approach can also be used complementary, maybe for one habitat of the site you are resisting, for one other you are directing, and also what you do on a local scale can maybe different than what is the national strategy. And then another philosophical question can be like, how variable is the autonomy of nature? This applies especially to big wilderness area that maybe in Europe are really common, maybe some places in the mountains or in Lapland, but basically we have few areas left that are really untouched by humans, and these are destined to change with climate change. So what do? Do you start to put your hands on it to like preserve the biodiversity in it, or do you leave this untouched place untouched and see what happens? And this can also be very subjective. Now we can talk a bit more in detail about this questionnaire that we have developed, which aim at investigating management plans for climate change adaptation, and also to identify what are the most effective actions in the face of climate change. To do so, we are collecting a series of information on the list of management recently done in the sites, and then also on the main management actions, what species, habitat they help, or which threats they addressed. And also we're asking if any of these actions can maybe fit in this resist, accept, direct framework. And also if there are any threats in the site still unaddressed by any action. So this is some sites from in the map. You can see some sites from where we had the answers until now. And the questionnaire is made in a way that after you select the site, it connects to a database containing information taken from the standard data form of the selected site, so that in a way it's sort of easier and faster to answer. So you will see the options to some questions based on the data that is there in the standard data form. And also if there are sites that are overlapping and they're managed together, it's possible to answer once for all of them, selecting eventually the additional sites. And also it's important to notice that even if no management is done in the site, it will still be important to have an answer, because also that we have more generic questions in it. Here you can see a bit more how it looks. This is the first question, and it's maybe the longest one, where we are asking about all the actions that have been done in the last 5 years. And we are using this list of official conservation measures described by the EU, and they are divided in category. Here I cut it, but there are more categories. And yeah, and if you're not familiar with this category, there is also a link that explains more in detail what each action does. But most of them, they are quite self-explanatory. And then we ask to select the main actions and to select which threats, species, and habitats did it address. And here, the options are is the data that is present in the standard data format. But of course, you can also add some more if you think that the information there is incomplete. And we are asking TIS to do this for at least one action, but if you're willing to fill the same amount of information for more action, that is, of course, possible and nice. And yeah, now we can maybe see one more in detail, one example of one site that filled the questionnaire, so that you have an idea of what picture we have of the site after we have an answer from it. And you can maybe see it as a more advanced version of a standard data form, if you want. So here we are in Valvedasca, is a Natura 2000 site in north of Italy, in this mountainous region. And yeah, from the question, we know that these are the actions done in the last 5 years. It's not very important now to go through all of them. It's just to have an idea. The different ones, the many related to agriculture, some to forestry, and others. And this was selected to be the main the main actions to protect biodiversity in the site. So to reinstate appropriate agricultural practices to address abandonment, including mowing, grazing, burning, or equivalent measures. And we know that it addressed one threat, which is the abandonment pastoral system and lack of grazing. And it helped 5 species of birds, 1 of mammal and 2 of invertebrates. And it addressed 2 habitats, the dry heaths and 1 type of grassland. Of these actions, these first 4 were selected to help resisting the effect of climate change, like prevent conversion of natural and semi-natural habitats into agricultural land. And 3 of them were also selected to help directing the effect of climate change. And no actions were selected to accept the effect of climate change. And in this case, all of actions were considered to fit in this framework, but maybe some fit only the resist aspect, but maybe also none of your action may really fit in this resist accept direct framework. And we're asking this question only if you answer yes to a question before, where we are asking if you consider climate change in the management of the site. So if you don't, you are not even shown this question. And then we're also asking some final questions. So here we know what are the unaddressed threats in the site. There are different types, from surface water abstractions by fish farms to many also related to infrastructure like skiing complex and sports pitch, and also a few others. And then we're also, for the last question, we're asking what is the main source of funding. So in this case, the main source of funding was coming from Europe, but other than life. Then the second is funding and volunteering, then private and public and life. And yeah. So if any of you is interested in filling the questionnaire, here I have a few things to keep in mind. That it's maybe useful while you fill the questionnaire to have ready the management plan of the protected area. Also, there's the issue that some people they may manage multiple sites, and of course it can be very time assuming doable to answer for all. So in that case, you can just feel free to pick some sites that you maybe consider representative, or also, to be honest, you can also just pick the one that you are more comfortable with, the one that you know the better. Also, maybe it can be a bit longer if you are not used to describe the management actions using the European nomenclature, but as I was saying before, it's quite self-explanatory, and there's the link with the explanation that you can access from the first page of the questionnaire. And also one last practical things that you shouldn't let the page inactive for more than 15 minutes, because otherwise it will automatically disconnect. This is just a technicality of the platform that we are using to host the questionnaire on. So yeah, thank you for the attention. If you have any questions, and also if some of you are interested in filling the questionnaire and you want to do it now, you can also stay connected and you can do it live. And if you have any question, or so you want to say what you think about it, we can stay connected for a while. Thank you very much. Maybe we can send it in the chat.
Thank you, Giorgio, for your presentation. I have shared the questionnaire link to, or the link to your blog page to everyone. So those of you who want to fill it, you can access the questionnaire via that link. And yeah, I think we have time for questions, correct?
Yeah, sometimes maybe if the page of the blog doesn't work, you can also send the official link of the questionnaire, but maybe that works fine. Just let us know if it doesn't.
So we'll be sitting here for a little while. If you have any questions about the questionnaire for Giorgio, you can ask it now as you fill the questionnaire, or otherwise you can just continue with the Q&A for the presentation.
Thank you, Monica. And I see that there's just one question for the time being. It's about questionnaire. If it's just for Natura 2000 sites.
Yes, it's only for Natura 2000 sites, because it connects to this standard data form. So unfortunately, also like UK sites are not included in the question.
Okay, thank you. And
maybe I can complete,
yeah, please.
Because many protected areas are nationally designated inside Natura 2000 protected area. So if you are not the manager of the whole protected area, like the whole Natura 2000 protected area, but you are actually managing a small part of this Natura 2000 protected area, you can use the questionnaire.
And another question about geographical range is just for Europe, or it can be used anywhere.
The question is for if it's about the question, it's for Europe, or if it's more in general about the.
It was just a question if you could use it for other countries outside Europe. Probably not. And I see a comment. Oh, Anya, thank you for presentations. If there will be information meetings in relation to the forthcoming guidance, where would it be posted? Do you have, Giorgio or Eddie, any idea where information about kind of follow-up? Definitely we'll all get the follow-up after the webinar with some recordings, some website links or whatever. So I think that you will find this information there. But if you have any ideas for upcoming meetings, whatever, you can share it now. If not, definitely you can use the list from the webinar to inform you about the next events and meeting, right?
Yes, I just wanted to add something, because we will be organizing probably more webinars in this series later. So you will be, I will send an email to everyone who registered for this webinar informing of the next webinar and what information you can find where. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, unless you are asking specifically regarding the EU's climate change guidance, because that's a different topic.
Thank you. I think it was clear enough. Okay, so I hope we are waiting for some people are just filling the form and adding some new data. So feel comfortable, no hurry. You can spend some time also after the webinar, but now you have a chance to check it with the author of the questionnaire. I've got one general consideration, thinking, well, maybe not exactly about the questionnaire, but about the change in, let's say, kind of Natura 2000 planning paradigm in view of climate change, because we used to think about our conservation goals in terms of favorable conservation status for species and habitats. But well, thinking about climate change in longer, because I think that when we started with Natura 2000 network 20 years ago, well, it was not that visible, or everybody was thinking about decline in biodiversity. But now our experience is growing, and does it influence somehow planning in Natura 2000? Thinking about kind of approach of kind of shifting borderline for the species and conservation status, whatever. Maybe Stefania, do you have any consideration on the commission level, if it already happened in the approach to planning in Natura 2000?
Not so much, and that's why we are updating the guidance document. So I think it's quite clear that it has started, yes, a bit here and there, but not really, and not as much as is needed, and for sure not in a EU level that it should happen.
Thank you. Personally, I would be very interested if there was even one case, for example, if we had kind of decline of species because of climate change in any site, but it is written that because there's no glaciers or whatever, that there's no species anymore, and we can just blame climate directly. And I'm not sure even if we are able to put it there in the form that the reason of declining biodiversity is connected with climate, but it would be very interested to see if there's such an evidence if something disappears already in our European Natura 2000 sites because of climate change. That might be interesting.
Yeah, as far as I know, this already happened in the past, and there is no penalty for Natura 2000 site or member state of the EU when a target is missed because of climate warming. So if a species targeted by Natura 2000 area is declining, but this is because climate warming, then there is no penalty. So this is recognized currently. But then instead of only thinking about what we can miss, we can also, we should also actually think about what and where new target will appear. This is very prospective or speculative, but maybe we can expect in South France some Iberian lynx, and protected area manager can already think about managing the habitat for this species, this iconic species. The same can appear a bit everywhere in Europe. So we should not only think about which species will get extinct locally, but which species we will get, and what kind of opportunity climate change can offer. And here I don't say that climate warming is good. This is a dramatic issue, and we should avoid climate warming. But because it's here, and because it might last for a long time, we should also think in the future where the species might persist in the long term. And just maybe to say something about why the questionnaire is not targeting a protect area outside of the Natura 2000 network. It's because it has been framed on the standard data format, which is a very comprehensive way to report data at each Natura 2000 site in the EU. And this is nearly not existing in other protected area network. It might be existing a bit for the Ramsar network, but I'm not sure if other network can report this kind of information. So this was really helpful to build the questionnaire, because many information is already stored in the database, so you don't have to fill it again.
Thank you. Just checking with our audience. Is there anyone trying to fill the form? You can, maybe we can open also the chat if you would like some freedom to write about your troubles to all, because for the time being it was just possible to write in Q&A, but now the chat is open to everyone, so you can have some more general thoughts. Do you have any technical issues with entering the form and logging there? Yes, I see people are still there. I hope that somebody is trying at least to fill the form. Okay, I see no questions.
And the next steps are making a synthesis of what is done in the EU in terms of conservation action, and how this conservation action can be used to set up a climate warming adaptation strategy. So this will be done over a research project. So Giorgio will conduct it, and probably in 1 or 2 years we will have some answer and some publication about that.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie, for catching us up on what's going to happen next. I personally am looking quite forward to see the result of the questionnaire and to see what you managed to pull out of it, because it feels like a lot of people had a lot of things to say, let's say. Do you perhaps, Giorgio, already see any trends or any interesting insights from your from looking at the responses besides what you already presented?
Yeah, we saw that. I mean, it was interesting to see the climate change related threats in different sites, and that most of the people that answered, they did manage for climate change, but not all. And yeah, then there's of course a lot of variation from different bioregions, and yeah, we will see. Of course, agriculture still seems to be the biggest predominant threat to most of the site. Maybe followed by forestry related issues, but climate change ones are maybe even more than what I was expecting.
Nice. Yeah. I was wondering if just how much these climate adaptation actions are in the minds of Natura 2000 site managers, because I can imagine it's can be very much very much a threat if you don't know how to plan your next 10 years, because some changes are happening. So I hope that at least, if anything, this webinar served to bring it a bit more forward into the minds of everyone. I don't know what you prefer to do right now, if we stay on longer, or if you want to wrap it up.
Maybe if there is no need for help filling the questionnaire, we can stop the webinar.
I see no more
If you
questions
want,
for now, so yes.
If you want some help in the future, you can also email Giorgio.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Maybe I'll write you can write your email in the chat, just so people can copy. In any case, I will send out an email to everyone who registered soon, with a link to a page with the recording and some extra information on this questionnaire, and possibly following webinars on this theme. Obviously, we don't know yet when they're going to be, but you will for sure receive information on what goes on next, at least, that you can follow. And yeah, Giorgio has shared this email address in the chat, so feel free to shoot any questions you might have about the questionnaire or anything to him.
And also, yeah, if anyone is interested, maybe from hearing from some specific sites or some specific areas, they can ask me about it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, thank you, Giorgio, Ellie, and Stefania, for your time here. Yeah, and yeah, it was great to have you, and very informative talks. So I hope to that we keep in touch soon with the rest of the work on climate adaptation. And as for everyone, I hope you all have a good end of your day and evening. And yeah, we'll see you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.